A quick note before we get started. If you are an established coach or consultant earning around 3 to 5K months or higher, and you are ready for greater income, more freedom, deeper authority in your field alongside people at the same level as you, the Next Level Mastermind could be your next step. It is my high touch mastermind, which I don't open very often, designed to help you get to that next level in your business, whatever that might mean for you. So, whether that's refining your business model, building leveraged offers, or stepping into greater authority into your field and leadership as the CEO in your business, then this could be your next step. It is application only. So if you are not quite at this stage yet and you're still building up a initial client base, then the business of coaching is the best place to start. But if you are at that stage, you will find the details to the Next Level Mastermind and the links to apply in the show notes. We start on the 11th of September, so the summer is the time to apply. Get that application in now, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If there is a small delay, I may be on holiday, but I look forward to catching up with you soon. Hi, Jessica. I am so excited to welcome you to Women in the Coaching Arena. You have a really unique perspective to add, which is the inner game of high fee coaches and consultants, because I know your clients are usually 6 figures plus, moving towards 7 figures. So I'm really excited to explore the mindset shifts and the inner game that it takes to get to that level and maintain it. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So, firstly, thank you for having me, Joanna. When we did our podcast interview on my show, we had so much fun, didn't we? It felt like we could have talked all day. So, I'm really pleased that we're doing this today. I'm Jessica Fernley. I am the business coach for women consultants looking to move from 6 figures to 7 figures, doing it by working less and earning more. I'm doing it on your terms, according to ease and flow, not hustle, not grind, not stress, all of the things that we equate with growing your business. It actually works better when you can build according to what works for you instead of trying to change yourself to be this archetypal, this is what a coach should be, this is what a consultant should be. So it's really about connecting with you, the person, and building the business that will work for you.
Yeah, totally. If we're thinking about the consultants and coaches that you see get stuck at a plateau, what do you think's really going on behind that?
Yeah. So I think there's so many things that come into play when we are setting out in business, when we are looking at these big goals of 6 figures and 7 figures. I was just on earlier with my head of operations. We were having like an internal meeting, and she made some reference to 3K months, which was actually a typo. That wasn't what she meant to write. I was like, oh, I used to have a poster on my wall that was like, when I make £3,000 a month. It just felt like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get there. I would say absolutely. Business growth is all about getting to that place where you believe in full integrity with yourself, your brain, your body. You're like, yeah, this makes sense to me. This is something that I can aspire to, because the thing that I see so often is women who are like, I want to make 6 figures, but I don't know anyone who does that. I don't know if I can. And I think for women in the UK, particularly, there are so few women who actually need to pay VAT because they haven't hit the threshold. I think it's 90,000 now, isn't it? It's very hard for me as a supplier when I'm looking for suppliers to actually find a female supplier who charges VAT, which is very good for me because I have to. But being able to use someone who also has VAT registration, because you can claim back the stuff that you pay them and all that. I just think that there are so many women out there who really want to get to 6 figures and really want to get to 7 figures. I have women reach out all the time who are like, I'm not at 6 figures yet, but I know that I can be a 7 figure coach, a 7 figure consultant. There's something about that brand, which is why I built my brand around it. Just that concept of course, I should be able to get to 7 figures. Yet, when we set out on the path of trying to do it, there are so many voices in our brains. And sometimes people will say this to us. Don't you think that's a bit ambitious? Don't you think that's a bit too much?
Yeah, totally. And I think what you said about knowing others who are in this space is so important. For me, it's been so good to be part of a mastermind where I hear other normal women like me earning good money and
Yeah.
creating amazing businesses. I think otherwise you just see these shiny people online and you think, well, I'm not that shiny. I can't do this. And then you start to get in the
Yeah.
room with people and realize that they're just the same as you.
Absolutely, and that's the strange thing is that even when we are doing some of these numbers, you can look at it and be like, "It doesn't feel plausible." Like, "How am I able to do this?" And if you don't know people who are also doing it, I'm sure it's like a woman thing that we have because we're so aware of our community and what other people are doing relative to what we're doing. I really do feel that even when you can see it in black and white, like, I do 6 figures, I do 7 figures, it's really hard to accept, like, I'm not having an imposter moment. I'm not pulling a fast one on the world. This is a genuine business built with integrity. I am definitely doing those things. And it doesn't matter if you're making your first 10,000, your first 100,000, or even more than that. We need to be able to accept that that's something that makes sense. We need to be able to receive it when it happens.
I love that you mentioned 3K as your goal earlier, because lots of my audience will be nearer that end of thinking that would be amazing. Tell me how you managed to go from that being your goal.
Well, I will share that in my first year of business, do you know what my annual goal was? It was £6,000 for the entire year. And what I found was in almost my first month, I made £4,000 and it freaked me out so much that I didn't sell anything again for 9 months. I remember really vividly because at the time, my son, who's now 11, was a baby. I left my corporate career when I was 27. It was really bad burnout. It was a whole host of things, physical health problems, the mental health problems from the stress of the physical health problems. My 9 to 5 corporate job in London was something that I loved to do, but it just didn't work for me. So I'd gone from that career into being head of operations for a startup consultancy firm. And that's where a lot of my business growth stuff that I'd learned through doing project management in London got road tested, and we had a lot of fun growing that company from 6 to 7 figures. But then I got pregnant, and while I was on maternity leave, I was so bored. I was off for a year, and I was just like, I just don't know what to do. I feel like I haven't spoken to an adult in such a long time. I haven't used my brain. Baby just cries. But so I got this idea of like, I love helping grow stuff. From there, a friend actually said to me, "You should become a business coach." And I was like, "What are you talking about? That's not a thing." And she was like, "It literally is." So I was Googling, what is a business coach? And was like, oh my gosh, this would be perfect for me. But you can't just Google a job title and then become it. But that's kind of what I did. So I started out with this lofty goal of £6,000 because that was the gap that we had in our family finances. And I was like, okay, I think I can probably do that. Completely freaked myself out by I had a thing that cost £2,000, sold it twice in the first month, and then cried talking to my husband in the kitchen being like, "That used to be my annual bonus. I don't know what this means. Like, I'm only doing 2 hours work with them a month." And it was just that real thing of now I look back and I'm like, what was the problem in that situation? I didn't know how to receive £4,000 in one go, and I didn't know how to receive money for my coaching services because not very long before that, I hadn't even known what a coach was. So we need to get to a place where we can believe, yes, this is me, this is plausible, this is what I can earn. But in answer to your question, Joanna, about how did I get to sort of where I am now from that very kind of slow start, and particularly because I remember in the house that we lived in at the time, we had a sort of attic conversion on the top floor. And I had this big, like, two poster where I used to do all my business planning. And now I've got a whiteboard on my wall where I do all of that. I used to look at that so often and be like, £3,000 a month. Come on. That just feels impossible. So I think it's always a process of thinking your way into it. I do this with clients when we're modeling how to get to 7 figures, but it works just as well for 6 figures or any goal. And it's like, okay, so what do I have? What am I charging for it? And how many times do I need to sell it in order to hit that goal? There was a realization that the women I really want to work with don't take me very seriously because I'm not charging them enough. Does that mean I've got to put my prices up? But that was very much the lesson I needed to learn. Like, you teach people how to treat you. And if you're like, oh, yeah, I can help you make 6 figures, but you only charge people £500, it might interest you to know that my very first client, I charged her £30 for 2 hours with me. I'd started at the negative extreme in terms of mindset. It's a question of just keep taking the next step. When something comes up that we need to process and release, like a limiting belief, a traumatic money story from earlier in your life, whatever it might be, you just need to keep taking the next step. And really, that's the way that kind of £100 as your fee becomes 1,000, becomes 10,000, becomes 50,000. It's about being open to the next thing, and ultimately, you get to a point where you realize there's actually no limit on anything. All these ceilings that we create for ourselves, they are self-imposed and they usually don't exist. That's a real kind of brain explosion when you start to really lean into that.
I was just about to ask, what did you used to believe that you no longer believe? And that's probably a great one. But anything else that comes to mind with that question?
Oh my gosh, I mean, everything. No one will pay more than £30. That's not true. I can tell you that categorically. I used to believe that it had to be hard. A lot of my clients still hold on to this. And that's the thing with some of these limiting beliefs. Have you heard people say new level, new devil? I actually find that sometimes new level, same devil as before, only now more zeros on the end. We still have that glass ceiling in place that we're like, oh yeah, you can charge 10,000, but you couldn't charge 20. You couldn't charge 50. So we keep playing the same games. Very often we need to do the same work at every level of business to be like, okay, this is going to be fine. We can see this and the way that it's going to work out. But I think I had a lot of confidence issues that were quite personal and specific to me. And I think for a lot of my clients, because they've been in corporate sometimes for 2 decades, they've got that experience behind them. They're quite confident in the workplace, actually, in a way that I wasn't because I'd left under such traumatic circumstances at such a young age, at such an early part of my career. I was 27 when I stopped working in corporate. For me, there was an extra layer of like, people won't take you seriously, people won't be interested in what you say. And even like, the meme stuff that we all have, like, your voice sounds stupid. It's so funny because now I meet people and they're like, I love your podcast because I love listening to your voice. You've got the most beautiful voice. And I'm like, really? I've always hated that about myself. So I think I'll say this to illustrate it. I met a coach several years ago who does a lot of work with almost hypnotherapy, replacing wrong beliefs, the up-leveled version of you. At first, I was very resistant and I was like, I don't want to become someone who believes delusional stuff about myself. Like, I am magical at everything and everything I do is a massive success. But when I started doing some work with her, what I realized was the negative stuff that I'd been believing about myself before, your voice is stupid, no one thinks you're good at this, was so much more delusional than the positive things. Over time, I was like, oh my gosh, the stuff that I'm trying to step into, people are already saying these things to me. I'm the only one who doesn't see this. I've seen that so much with clients. We are our harshest critics and we often have such a distorted view of ourselves compared to how our colleagues, our peers, our clients, they view us in a completely different light, but we are often the last to know.
Yeah, totally. That identity gap is huge, especially as your business grows. If I'm reflecting on how my business has grown, my clients think I'm like a really super successful businesswoman. And then obviously half the time I'm just like, I'm just muddling through like you guys. But like you say, there's that identity gap that we often have and we get stuck at that certain point of our journey, even though we've grown hugely since that point. So tell me what you did to overcome those gaps and move your identity forward to where you are now.
Yeah. So to be honest, there's kind of two answers to this. The first thing is I played small for quite a long time, actually. I was probably in business for about 6 years before my business really took off and I kind of got to six figures plus. There was really slow growth. To be fair, I had a baby, another baby during that time. I wouldn't say it slowed me down, but it was quite a big thing to build in. We also moved up to Sheffield where we knew no one. Around the same time, my dad died really suddenly of cancer. So there was stuff going on in those years that meant I wasn't always, let's blow the roof off this business. Sometimes I was just clinging on for dear life, being like, let's survive. That's a good idea. I would say that's the thing that I wouldn't recommend to do is to always play to the safest, lowest number that you can, because I actually found that I held my own growth back, setting the bar high enough and sometimes not attracting in people who I really wanted to work with and actively discouraging people who would have been amazing to work with because they were like, do you have game? Because You don't seem to believe in yourself. And, it's a lot, isn't it, to ask our clients to believe in us more than we believe in ourselves. We have to have that the right way around. But I think the other thing is to allow your ambition for your business to exist and grow as you grow. I've never really got to a point in business where I'm like, I've done everything now. Sometimes I observe these big name coaches and some go into retirement and seem like, I'm financially free. And some of them I really think are still like playing out some version of kind of money scarcity and acting like they're desperate for the money. And it's like, oh, are you telling the truth about how much money you make? Do you need another 10 million after the 20 you've already made? I just think that's super interesting to observe. But I think it's knowing that we usually are holding space for an immediate goal. So it might be the six-figure goal. But once we get to that point, and that's a key part of the story, because very often we will be like, it'll never happen. Like, we hold space for it, but then deep down, we're kind of expecting it not to happen. But this is often when I meet women and they're like, oh, yeah, so I grew this business and now the annual turnover is 300,000. And sometimes there is a bit of a like, I don't know if that's allowed. I think it's knowing that once you get to that initial goal, something else will come in and it's like, are we open to the bigger version? So if you hit 100,000, what's the next thing? Is it 300? Is it 500? Is it a million? We go through that exact same process again of, I don't know if I'm allowed that, and having to do the work on all of that.
If you're working with coaches and consultants who are putting in a proposal to an organization, perhaps it's a really high fee in one hit, how do you recommend that they do that and go through that process of putting that scary number on that proposal?
Yeah. So there's two ways we can go about this. The first one is to just be like, boom, there it is. It's a big number. Let's just do it. And I think for my clients who know that what they've been charging is out of alignment with who they actually are, because I know I've been through that journey, it's very easy for me to spot it for women who are also in that situation. Sometimes it's the right thing to just be like, look, you got to stick a zero on this. In fact, you might need to stick two. So, like, we're going big from now on. So, one of the things I say to my clients is that from now on, your minimum contract size is $100,000. I work with women all over the world. I do most of my work with women in the US. And for corporate consulting, that is something which everyone is sort of like, really? But it's also not outside of the realms of possibility. So I always think kind of aligning what you're doing to some of these big numbers. If you're an executive coach, why can't you charge 50,000? And again, it's like, do you think you're good at what you do? Because people pay all kinds of stuff for all kinds of things. It's not like Tesco where it's like, this is this. And if we scan you at the checkout, this number will show up on the screen. It's a lot more fluid than that. But the other thing that you can do, if you're looking at the big number, and it's not always the best thing to just be like, I'm going to jump into this because it feels really scary. Like sometimes that pays off and sometimes it's not the right move. And this is where personal connection to your goals and intuition really comes in. If you're charging 10,000 at the moment, why not make it 12 next time? Why not make it 15 next time? What my clients consistently find is we almost play this game where we're like, what does the client do when you say the price? And if you say the price and they go, yeah, that's fine. It's like, wow, should have been higher. And the other version of that game is like, what do the men charge for the guys who are doing this? Because it's really common. A client of mine was saying the other day, she met someone who's like her, but with more zeros. And I was like, isn't that always the way? The men are always charging more than the women. So it's making sure that we are truly competitive within the market for the skill set that you have.
Where do you even begin with consulting or coaching pricing? My clients constantly send me their thing going, what number shall I put on it? And it's so varied, isn't it? So anything you've got on pricing in practical terms.
I think it should always be high enough, but I think we like to feel like there's a price list. And a conversation that I have often, especially with women that I'm not working with, where they'll almost be like, in my industry, no one charges more than this. My answer to that is, are you in the right industry? Are you sure you want to be in this industry? Because why do it if you can only do low paid work? That doesn't feel very fun for anyone. And there's usually a lot more transferability between industries, especially if you've come up in the not for profit sector. I think it's starting to get an understanding. You can charge anything for anything. The real question is, how dialed in are you to what your client needs? How much do you understand their organization? How much do you understand the budget they have available? And how much of that budget they're willing to part with to deal with their corporate problems, these core things that they're under pressure to deliver. When something becomes an organizational objective, it's amazing how much budget can be found for the right solutions. And I think we talked about that, didn't we? When you came on my show, Joanna, just understanding where the client is and knowing not just what you want to sell, but what they are looking to invest in.
Yeah, totally. And I love that you identified that even that is a decision. So it's just a story. In other words, why are you choosing this industry then if you can't make any money in it? Like, we do create our own
Yeah.
future. We can make decisions on what industries to go after. So I
Yeah.
love that, rather than believing the story of, okay, no one will pay that in your industry, you might as well just give up. No, no. How
Yeah.
else can you take charge?
Understandable for women to feel like that because, that is how a lot of us have been treated in our careers. Women often end up in lower paying careers than men. That is actually just an economic fact. We are often drawn to lower paid work, and we can almost internalize that and be like, you can almost have what you want, but you won't get paid for it. And so, a really big story that we have to overcome, and I think this is why I was crying in my kitchen like 10 years ago, but like, oh, look, you can have what you want and you can get paid what you want. I think that's one of the hardest things to grasp. What if, we always say, what if I can't do it? What if you can do it? What if there's actually nothing stopping you from doing it? I find that way more overwhelming than coping with disappointment, which I've been very used to. And I think that's a really common theme in the client work that I do. And I'm sure you've seen the same thing.
Oh, yeah, totally. Because I think then leading us perfectly into, okay, so we get the gig, we've got this big money for our coaching consulting. Then what can come up is the over delivering and lack of boundaries. So tell me more about what you see when someone does get that big contract. Suddenly it's like, yay, they paid me all this money. What can happen next?
Oh, I mean, this is a very special kind of meltdown, isn't it? Where it's like, the pressure, I need to be worth the money. But the thing that I always say to clients is the more they pay, the less they get. And I love saying that because people are like, what? And then you think about it, you're like, no, that actually makes perfect sense because they're not paying for like 10,000 things. When you try and stuff a proposal with extra bits because you're like, I feel really bad because I'm charging £10,000. So I've got to make it worth their while. It's like, no, that's the wrong mindset because most people, especially these corporate organizations, do not have time to sit through a course. They don't have time for extra trainings. If they've asked for those things and it sweetens the deal, then great. But there is such a difference between that vibe and just adding extra things so we feel less guilty. We have to get to a place where we're like, they're paying me for my brain, my amazing experience, my amazing skills in this area. That is where the value is, not in all these extra things that we can make up and add.
I absolutely love that phrase. Tell me it again.
What the more they pay, the less they get.
That's that's the one. I need to write that down. The more they pay, the less they get.
Well, the other
Uh,
one that goes with that is if they pay less, this is for like negotiations. If they pay less, they get less. So, when you do a proposal and they're like, oh, we only have budget for 60% of that. Can we have 100% of that and pay 60%? No, if you pay 60%, get 60%. It's a very helpful little rule to have in your brain.
oh, it's so, so good. Because, like you say, otherwise people just get the whole thing, even though they want it for cheaper. So I love that other quote as well. So then we can think we need to do more to gain all of this business, and we need to work harder because we're earning all of this money now. So, how do you talk about simplifying to grow? I'm sure I've heard you talk about this on your podcast, how to actually make life easy and still grow your business.
Yeah. So a big thing that I talk about a lot is working less and earning more. And you have to be careful you say it the right way round, otherwise it's not aspirational at all. But working less, earning more. I've found that this is something that almost everyone in the world wants to be able to do. But to really pull back from this perspective where it feels like if they're paying more, that means I have to give them more. If I want to make more in my business, that means I have to work harder. Actually, sometimes our conscientiousness and our hardworking nature is the thing that holds us back from making more money because we're still trying to play small with the wrong audience. Because this is the thing, when people are like, oh, spoke to a really great company, they're my ideal client, they just don't have any budget. And it's like, if they don't have budget, they are not your ideal client because that's not a winning situation. If you get that gig, you're not going to enjoy it. So it's really about aiming for the top of the market instead of like the inoffensive bottom of the market where we're like, it's great. They're willing to take a chance on me and I'm giving them a really good price because they've taken a chance on me. It's like, ugh, they're getting an amazing deal. Don't put yourself out like that. That is not the way to be treated well as a coach or consultant. But I think the really important thing is that we understand like what is the actual market value of what I'm able to offer. If you've come out of a corporate career, if you've been in senior leadership, you have skills that are very valuable. What I love seeing in my clients is very often they really understand what it's like from the other side of the table because they've commissioned work like the services they're looking to offer. That is the best mindset to be in of like not just like me and the things that I wanna do, and I wanna make people feel really good, which, we all do, and that's lovely. But what is the corporate organization actually looking to achieve? When we can really align the things that we're delivering, that's when we can create work that will be £100,000 or dollars. Even it can run to sort of 400, 500, depending on the organization, depending on what you're doing. So, things like leadership development, you can do that as a coach. Management consulting, this is why the big four firms do it. It's very lucrative. So, whatever field you're in, you've got to start thinking about it. It's like, what is the version of what this is? Instead of trying to do the thing that will not get you criticized or not show that you can do these things and you're not very confident at the other things, what actually takes account of who you truly are and the expertise that you have. And how can you start to put that across in a way that makes it an absolute no-brainer? Because it doesn't need to be hard to get some of these really big contracts. My clients are amazing, but they're also human. They're not superheroes. They are skilled professionals, as your audience are as well, I would imagine, Joanna. It doesn't need to be this really complicated thing that's only for very special people. You're way more special than you often realize.
Oh, I love that. And if you're thinking about maybe one of your most successful clients, describe them to me, what sort of traits they have and the journey that they've maybe been on to get there.
Yeah, well, I think something that I've seen with quite a few clients is coming into consulting. Like a lot of my clients, they do both. I think coaching is one of those skills at this level of an organization. You're probably going to be doing an element of coaching because you've got to get the leadership on side, got to deal with a few different personalities. There's often stuff that needs to happen within teams to get people to play well together. The thing that I see quite often is that people follow demand. So it's like, oh, will you do this? And then another organization is like, can you do this other thing, which is completely different? And it's all within your kind of general specialty, but nothing is niche down or specific. When I meet women in that situation, typically they're a bit fed up. They're working incredibly long hours. They're fairly burned out and they've created a perfect replica of the corporate job that they didn't like very much and they wanted to get away from. It could be that this feels quite obvious, but the thing that you need to do in that situation is to get really intentional about the kind of work that you actually want to do because it's subtle. But like if you're a yes person to your corporate masters, they'll say, can you jump over here? Yes. How high? Can you jump in this other direction? Of course I can. And what you end up doing is dealing with this generality where you're always slightly beyond what you can actually cope with and what you know how to do. And there's no space in that for your own preference, for your own kind of lots of my clients, they will say, I've done this broad stuff, but the thing I really love is this narrow piece here. When you start to actually get intentional, it's scarier because you're asking for something different to what sometimes people are wanting you to do. When you can be really specific and say, I want to be the specialist, we call it zone of genius. I don't know if you've come across the book by Gay Hendricks. Yeah, Big Leap. I love that book. And it's so applicable to this kind of niching decision making. But when you really know what your zone of genius is, the thing that you provide to an extremely high standard, because that's your gifting, that's your experience, that's your career, that's what it's been about, there is such a premium value on that. But I definitely think it can be so hard to stop being the yes person because as women, and my clients are often very different personalities, but almost everyone finds it hard to be like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I only want to do this. There's always some friction of, I don't know if I'm allowed to be specific about what I want.
Totally. And I can see your book in the background called Too Much. Tell us more about what that book and that title means.
Yeah. So I wrote the book over 2 years. It came out earlier this year. And what I was finding is that in conversations with other entrepreneurs, there was some level of like, oh, yeah, I am way too much. Oh, me too. I am so too much. And I think sometimes it's something more known and sort of colloquial in America than in the UK. But once people understand it, they really relate to it. It's this idea of like, you've always been told like you're doing a bit too fast, you're thinking a bit too fast, your ideas are a bit too out there, you're really thinking outside the box. We're not looking for a big solution. We're just looking to sweep it under the carpet and make it go away for another 6 years or whatever it might be. Women like this. We are the ones who end up as coaches and consultants because corporate cannot contain us. And the bigness of our ideas, the brightness of what we're looking to do in the world. And I think there's a lot of layers on there for women as well of like, it's not generally good to be an ambitious woman. I don't know if you've experienced that, Joanna. I definitely have. Try calling your business seven-figure consultant. Some people are just like, nope, I don't want to talk about that at all. So I've written the book to reframe this thing of too much. This doesn't need to be something that means there's something wrong with you. This is actually all about how we can take you and put you in the right rooms instead of the rooms where like people are thinking small and you're too much for that. What are the rooms where you're too much is just the right amount? It goes into kind of, as women, why I think we should all be aspiring to create wealth, and in the world, in our families, changing the world in that way. It goes into trauma and what you can do if you have trauma in your backstory that feels like it intrudes into your business. It also talks about how do we handle these big ambitions that we have? If you want to make £100,000 and it feels like every time you say that out loud, people are like, you'll be lucky. I can't tell you the number of people who've said that to me in similar conversations. So the book is for you if you're looking at your business and you're like, yeah, I want to do really well at this business, but why is everyone telling me that I can't all the time?
And if you're talking to the person who wants to gain corporate work, where should they begin?
Yeah, so I actually have a new free resource that just came out a few weeks ago called How to Get Your First B2B Consulting Clients. It's also very applicable to anyone who does executive coaching in corporate companies. So it breaks down some of the things that you might not have thought about. And if you're starting to really look at client acquisition, yes, I want to do this kind of consulting, I want to do this kind of coaching, it's an excellent place to start. It comes with a free private audio as well, where I break things down in even more detail.
Oh, sounds amazing. And I will link to that in the show notes. So if someone is listening today, they know they're playing small and they want to play a bigger game, what's your advice for them that they can actually implement this week?
Yeah, I would say in my book, I have a 3-stage framework: connecting to abundance, dealing with the inner critic, and feeling for aligned actions. But this first thing of connecting to abundance, it's almost like that voice that is always like, I want more. This should be bigger. I want a 7-figure business. What would happen if you just let it speak? I would literally sit down with your journal. I would free write my life as a 7-figure coach, my life as a 7-figure consultant, whatever it is. We have so many impulses, we have so many nudges from the universe, and we ignore all of them because we're like, that's too big. I'm not allowed to do that. That freaks me out. Let that voice start to speak, even if only to yourself. I've had clients who have done this and it has transformed the way that they show up in their business. So I would absolutely say, even if you're thinking like, oh, but that's 7 figures and I just want to get to 6 figures, that's fine. Get to 6 figures and the rest of your path will uncover. But the way to do it is to start to give yourself permission to own that ambition.
I love it. I cannot wait to actually start doing that myself. I used to journal all the time and now I've fallen out of the habit. So it's a great way of untangling your thoughts. And it's worked massively for me to grow my business to this level. So I cannot wait to write that
Yeah.
next goal, Jessica. Thank you so much for being on the show. I can't wait to share your resources and also your book. Any final words for listeners?
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to talk about these things. Pay attention to what your inner voice, your higher self is sending you. I often talk with my clients about 7-figure self, but you can just as easily make that your 6-figure self. But just like pay attention when these little nudges are coming up. I could do that. I could do a workshop like that. I could charge that. Again, what would happen if you listen to that voice instead of squashing it down?
Yeah, love it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Women in the Coaching Arena. I have a mass of free resources on my website, joannalottcoaching.com. That's Joanna with an A and Lott with 2 T's, joannalottcoaching.com. And I'll also put links in the show notes below. Let me know if you found this episode useful, share it with a friend and leave me a review, and I will personally thank you for that. Remember to trust yourself, believe in yourself, and be the wise gardener who keeps on watering the seed. Get into the arena, dare greatly and try.